Section 1.3 is on the basic terminology of geometry. We are going to talk about points, lines, and planes and their basic relationships and terms that we will be using to describe them. The first thing that you have to notice is that these words get used all the time and they represent very different things. Okay, for example, the word point, okay, in geometry it describes a location, but we talk about what's the point of your conversation, or you point at somebody when you're talking about them, or that kind of thing. So these terms get used a lot of different ways. In geometry, point defines a location. Lines. We talk about lines all the time, but the official definition of a line is it's a series of points. It's a group of points that come together and they go in opposite directions without end. That's what those little arrows mean. It means that it goes on forever. So a line is just a series of points. And a plane, in terms of our purposes, is a flat surface. It has no thickness, but it does go on forever. Sometimes these words are called the great undefined terms, and that's because the way that we draw them and their actual definition is very, very different. For example, a point takes up no space. Okay? It takes up no space. However, there's no way that you can draw a point without taking up some space. So its actual definition and the way that we have to draw it don't go together. A line is just a series of points. Again, since they don't take up any space, they don't have any thickness to them. But there's no way that you can draw a line without having some thickness to it. And a plane, if it goes on forever in all directions, how can you draw that? There's no way that you can draw that. However, we use a parallelogram to show the orientation of the plane. So whether it's a horizontal plane or a vertical plane or a diagonal plane, we use a parallelogram to give us an idea of where the location is of that plane. But understand that those are not actual edges. Okay? If I draw a point out here, right here, it's still on that plane because that edge just keeps going. So it's a little misleading. You have to be a little bit careful about planes. How do we name them? A point is named by a single capital letter. So I can take any capital letter and put it next to this diagram, and that's naming the point. So it could be point A, or point B, or point Q, whatever. Lines, there are two different ways that you can name a line. One is by points, if there are points labeled on that line. For example, if there's a point here that's Q and a point here that's R, we can name this line QR. To do that, you would write the two letters, Q and R, and then you would draw a line symbol over the top. That didn't turn out very well. And you've seen that before. So you would name the two letters, and if there's 16 points named on the plane, you still only pick two. Pick any two you want, but only use two. And then put the line symbol over the top. That's one way to name a line. The other way that you will see a line named is a lot of times you will see a line, but there won't be any points labeled on it. Well, if there aren't any points labeled on it, you can't use points to name it. Instead, what you'll see sometimes is a little lowercase letter that's just kind of floating around by the line. That single lowercase letter represents the entire line. And in that case, you'd actually write the word line, and we would call it line L, or whatever letter's down here. Let's say maybe it's an M, so then it would be line M, if that's the one it was. And it can be anywhere floating around the line. Okay, so those are the two very different ways that you can name a line. Both are acceptable. Your book shows you both, so you need to understand that both of those represent a line. In a plane, planes are a little bit different. There's also two ways to name a plane. If there are points in the plane, for example, we've got point B, point R, and point T here. Okay, they're points, so I'm labeling them with capital letters. But if there are three, and here's another term that we're going to learn, non-collinear. Collinear means together on a line, so non-collinear means they're not together on a line. So that means they're spread out. So if there are 3 points that are kind of all over the place in your plane, you can name it that way. And in that case, you can either just do capital letters, BRT. A lot of people will actually write the word plane in front of it, so it would be plane, BRT, and you can put the letters in any order. Or you can actually draw the parallelogram and write BTR, or whatever order you want to put them in. It makes no difference. Both of those would be acceptable. But just like the line, sometimes there are no points labeled on the plane. And if there are no points labeled, you don't have anything to name it with. In that case, a lot of times up in one of the corners, there will be a capital scripted letter, not a plain one, but maybe kind of a fancy looking one. The R's, might have kind of a little rolly thing in the corner or something to that effect. You can see that they don't have a point next to them, so they are not points. And if that's the case, you'd simply write out the word plane and then use the scrolly scripted letter, plain R. The rest of the terminology that you're going to talk about, we just talked about non-collinear, so not together on a line. There's collinear, which means that they're together on a line. There's coplanar, so together on a line, together on a plane, which means that they're points or lines that lie in the same plane. They're in the same flat surface. And non-collinear would be points and or lines that do not lie in the same plane. So they're scattered all over the place. So you might have, a line, 2 lines over here, and there's points on them, and then there's another point. These points are all on the same 2 lines, so they're maybe on the same flat surface, and then there's a point over here. So those would be non-collinear, because these 3 are together on a same flat surface, and this one is not on that flat surface. So that would be non-coplanar. Some basic rules, and some of these you're going to look at and go, really? But some of them, they will come in handy, I promise. Okay. The first one is, if you have 2 lines, if 2 lines intersect, in other words, if 2 lines come together in any way, shape, or form, their intersection is 1 point. And I actually drew that right here. Their intersecting point would be this one right here. That's their intersection. That's where they cross each other. So anytime you have 2 lines that come together, they're going to come together in exactly 1 point. Okay. 2 planes intersect in exactly 1 line. A really good way to remember that is, for example, the way a wall meets the ceiling. Okay? If you think about where a wall meets a ceiling, the wall doesn't just hit the ceiling in 1 point, it hits all the way across that line. So that is how that one goes. Okay? And if walls and ceilings went on forever, obviously the line would go on forever. In geometry, our planes will go on forever, so that line of intersection will go on forever. Another basic rule that we're going to use throughout the year is if you have 2 points, if you take any 2 points anywhere in the world, okay, you could take, 1 point at the very top of the Statue of Liberty and then take another point at, the top of the Bobber Water Tower, okay? Though you could make only 1 line that would exactly connect those 2 points, okay? So any 2 points in the whole wide world, there's exactly one line that would connect those 2 points. And in the last one, it says through any 3 non-collinear points. So in other words, you've got the point on the Statue of Liberty, the point on the water tower, and this one represents my computer right here. Okay? Through any 3 non-collinear points, so 3 points that don't all go together in one line, then there's exactly one plane that contains those. So there's exactly one flat surface that goes on forever that would contain the point at the top of the Statue of Liberty, the point at the desk, and the point on the water tower. Okay, so those are the 4 basic rules that we will be using throughout the year, and this vocab is very important. Make sure you understand that vocab. That concludes this lesson, and here are your homework assignments.